The football kick-off.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
And you're very welcome along to the football kick-off with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Make sure to subscribe to our own YouTube channel, and we're live every Friday around about 11:30, bringing you the best of the weekend's fixtures to watch on the telly. I'm delighted to welcome Keith Treacy and Phil Egan with us as well. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, Jerry. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. We were just chatting here before. How difficult is it for these footballers to try a leg this weekend if you're playing in the World Cup next week?
It is difficult. You know, a lot of people are saying it's not difficult, but it is. You know, my mind immediately goes back to Rafael Varane when we seen him crying. You know, when he pulled his hamstring against Chelsea, he knows immediately he's out of the World Cup. And again, this is a player who's a millionaire player, who's won the World Cup, player who's played in the Champions League, a player who's been there, done it in every sense of the word. But as soon as he realises he's not playing in the World Cup, he's crying like a you know, he's really, really wounded by it. So you can see how much it means to these players. So I do think we'll see a couple of funny results here and there. Maybe the so-called lesser clubs beating the bigger clubs, because also, you know, more internationals, they'll come a little bit more off the boil, and therefore the lesser clubs might just be able to beat them. So it remains to be seen, but I think it's the most human thing in the world, isn't it? Just to come off the boil and protect yourself that little bit.
Yeah, you were making the point though, it's difficult.
Yeah, I think it just shows the madness of putting the World Cup in the middle of a season. But yeah, definitely there's going to be players that are not going to be, they see the ball there and they think, do I really need to go in for that?
They're making business decisions.
But they often say that if you do that, then you actually could end up getting hurt even more.
Yeah, what about that? Like that bit where you're a little bit off, you don't go in properly for a tackle, you're half a centimetre away, you get caught by the opposite numbers studs, your shin is gashed. It's a 10-12 day injury, but they're the 10-12 days that are going to take you out of the first and second games of the World Cup.
Yeah, it's a strange one. It is usually one of them when you go into tackles trying to protect yourself that you end up getting hurt. I understand that, but you know, it's human. When you see a ball dropping, generally, you know, you don't start thinking about the World Cup in that split second. You do just go into the tackle. So I'm more thinking about the intensity of the running and you know, the intensity in the press, because you know, you can sort of protect yourself. You know, you have a 20-yard run to do to press somebody. You can run 20 yards pretty quickly and make it look like you're sprinting, but it's not really 100% sprinting. That's the sort of little percentages I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the crunching tackles, because generally these days the Premiership has gone a little bit away from that. There might be the odd tackle here or there. So I'm more talking about the intensity and the running. I don't think tackling will be a huge issue for anybody, really.
If you're a manager, are you thinking about this in your head and going, I'm not going to pick the lads who are in the World Cup, not because you want to rest them, but because that psychological aspect is like so say you're Unai Emery, and so brought Matty Cash off the bench last night. I was a bit surprised, because like, he's going to the World Cup, and does he, you know, I mean, I'm sure he does care about, because the game, I think at that stage it might still have been 2-2. Maybe they've just gone 3-2, I'm not sure. But I was, as a Villa fan, I was like, I'm not really sure we're bringing Matty Cash on now.
I think he was doing Ashley Young a favour.
Well, he had to, maybe in that instance.
Garnacho was starting to
kill him
up, yeah.
But I don't begrudge Matty Cash playing in the World Cup as a Villa fan at all. I think it's great for him, and I think, you know, generally that's good. But would I play him this weekend? I don't know. They probably have to. But equally, if I'm Unai Emery, am I thinking, I don't fully expect him, and I won't respect him any less if he doesn't try that 100% in those out and out sprints. If normally you'd expect him to have 25 high intensity sprints, if he's only going to have 19, is that the difference between us conceding a goal or not conceding a goal? It might be. So I'm just as well to stick in somebody who is going to play at full. I guess that's my long-winded way, Keith. Will managers take this into account in for a multitude of factors?
Yeah, look, I think it's a strange one for the manager, because obviously you want to pick your best players, and your best players will generally be going to the World Cup. And to talk about Matty Cash, he's probably quite a unique one, because his uniqueness as a fullback for me is his ability to get up and down the pitch, and he's very high output in what he does physically. So if you were to say to Matty Cash, you know, I'm going to take 10% away from you there, I think he'd struggle to make an impact in the game. So he really needs to be 100% going into games for me to have an impact. So if he was coming off that, but then again, you know, Unai Emery will be having a look at these lads, and he'll be thinking, you know, do I trust them to be able to still playing these games, because it's a saying that Sean Dyche used to say to me all the time: everybody wants to be a footballer, but not everybody wants to be a professional footballer. And these will be one of these times where you've got to go, you've got to turn up, and you've just got to. You don't want to get through the game, but that's what you'll be thinking in your head. I just want to get through this with no injuries, but you've still got to give somewhat of a performance, because, like I say, there's still a lot to play for. You know, Manchester City could top the Premier League going into the World Cup. Arsenal might top it. You don't really want to be in the bottom three going into the World Cup. It's a long time to be, a month or so, to be thinking about coming back to that. So there is a lot to play for. So the managers will. It's a fine balancing act of picking the players who are going, the players who are not going, but ultimately you want to win the game of football, and I think you've got to pick your best players for that.
And then on the other side of it, as a player, right, some players there are big suspicions that they haven't been trying as much of a leg, potentially because they've missed previous tournaments and have decided that they're not going to miss this one. We'll see how well they perform. Looking at you, Virgil. But what about, so take a player like Matty Cash, and you're saying he needs to be at 100%, or take one of the England players who are on the fringes of the team. Do they need to play really well this weekend to keep themselves in the best possible form? Because the 2 training sessions they have before the first game, they're going to need to absolutely explode if they're going to knock somebody who is in their position out of the team. That's the other side of this as well, that some people will actually be inspired to play their greatest ever football.
Yeah, some people will. I think to go back to England, I think that's probably half the reason that James Maddison is gone, because I think we could probably have a fair guess at what England's starting 11 would be. I don't think there'll be any huge surprises in there. Maddison, for me, isn't going to start. He's probably the big talking point, but he has that sort of ego, and I'm hearing a lot of ex-professionals talking about him and how he trains, and sometimes you need somebody like that, because when the starting 11 is pretty much set in stone, training sessions get into like this methodical thing, and you're not really getting the best out of each other. But if James Maddison is going there with a bit of an ego and thinks, I can get into this team, he's going to push training up, because then all of a sudden Jude Bellingham, Jordan Henderson, the likes, Declan Rice are thinking, I've got to perform now, because otherwise Maddison's going to look a little bit better than me in training. And if Declan Rice, for instance, is going to be marking Maddison in training and attacking against a defending midfielder, which you think would be a normal matchup in training, they're going to start driving each other around, and all of a sudden there's competition. Although for me, there's not an awful lot of competition in the starting 11 for England. Maybe a right back if they play a 5 or a 3 or maybe even a 4. It depends. But for me, I think it's pretty much set in stone the way the English are going to set up. But you need people like Maddison who are just going to drive the standards up in training and just put something a little bit different into the manager's mind.
Yeah. That is the other aspect, that some players will desperately try and use this last window to be the most important memory in the manager's mind when they're picking the team the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we hear that so often that managers should be picking the most informed players, but it doesn't always work like that with international football. I think you'll see that even sticking to the England team, there's going to be players starting in that team where...
Would you not be tempted, though, if you were Southgate, given the very weird nature of what we're talking about, to like break everything that got you to this point and suddenly just pick the players who are in form?
No. Southgate won't do it.
Would you not be tempted?
Oh, but I'm not a manager.
Well, come on. What would you do?
And that's probably why I'll never be a manager. But it's very easy to say you pick these informed players, but Southgate will pick his, what I'd say, tried and trusted. He trusts them, and they've got him so far. They obviously didn't get him over the line against Italy.
They got pretty close.
Yeah, but I think if anything, I'm not sure necessarily it was the players' fault. I think maybe Southgate in that final against Italy was too cautious, but that's the way he's going to approach this World Cup, and he kind of has to, because if you look at what we think will be their starting 11, they've got a really good team from midfield up, but where you worry is the defence. Yeah. So he has to protect that.
Yeah, or try and score a lot of goals, so that when you concede a lot of goals, that has not been the thing he's done. So it's not going to happen. Let's get into these fixtures this weekend. There's probably some of those players we'll talk about now. On Saturday, the early kickoff on BT Sport is Manchester City against Brentford at 12:30. The other game on Saturday evening, Newcastle against Chelsea at 5:30 on Sky Sports. And then the late game on Saturday evening is Wolves against Arsenal with a 7:45 kickoff. They're the Saturday kickoffs. We'll talk about the Sunday kickoffs in a moment. It's Brighton, Villa and Fulham, Manchester United. Manchester City against Brentford. Man City's form has been a little bit patchy recently. Keith, what do you put that down to?
Probably just the volume of games, and I know they were qualified in the Champions League with, I think, maybe a game to go, 2 games to go, so they weren't putting everything into that. And you look at the last 4 games, they've won the last 4 on the bounce. I know they drew one before that, but for me, I think it just has an air of inevitability about it. You know, I don't know whether they'll be top at the start of the World Cup. That'll pretty much be down to Arsenal, but they're just like the horse that's second in the race and the favourite, and you just know they're stalking and just waiting, and just eventually they will just go into another gear and just leave Arsenal behind. But I think they'll do that to the rest of the Premier League as well, with given how poor Arsenal have been. Chelsea are non-existent in the race, and you know, Spurs, I know that they're sitting in a pretty decent position, but I don't think they're going to challenge anybody really. So I expect Manchester City to win it at a canter really. I don't think they'll have to hit the heights that they have over the last couple of years, but I totally expect them to win the Premiership and go very, very deep into the Champions League.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about this a good bit. Maybe a bit more belief in Arsenal's ability to stay the course, but we really needed that penalty not to be given last weekend for us to have a sense that this might be a title race still deep into April and maybe even the start of May, that there's a possibility this will still be there. But then 97 minutes in, there's a penalty, the penalty gets scored, and even though they're down to 10 men, they still get 3 points, and it's like no points dropped, and you're like, oh my God, come on. They
71% possession with 10 men, and you kind of think, you're looking at that game tomorrow, you know, they're 7 from 7 at the Etihad. Brentford
could they have 90% possession?
Yeah, Brentford haven't won away from home. Like, this is what you call a home banker, and maybe even the only chance Brentford would have to have any chance, I think, in this one would be again if there was a freak red card for Man City. But yeah, I'd agree with Keith. It's just, it is a sense of City won't be too worried if they're not top come Saturday evening. After the World Cup, they'll all come back and they'll just do what they do. City are just so efficient because they let the ball do the work, whereas their greatest threat in the last few seasons has been Liverpool. But we know if Liverpool are off it in terms of their work rate, their game is based. Sure, Pep Lijnders, his book is called Intensity. It's all about intensity. City play with intensity, but they can also take the sting out of games where you can't get the ball off them. And that's what they'll do, and that's how they'll win the league. And I would imagine tomorrow he's got Erling Haaland. He'll probably leave him on the bench like he did the last week, and obviously comes on and scores the winning penalty. Didn't need to bring him on against Chelsea in the League Cup, but he'll have him on the bench, and if they need him, they'll use him.
I think he might start him because it's the last game for such a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I listen to what Guardiola said the other day. Now it'll be interesting to hear what he says today about Haaland, but he said that there's ligament damage in his foot. The bone isn't broken. Right. It didn't actually sound too great in terms of the possibility of Erling Haaland coming to Dublin next week.
Right, okay. I mean, you know, that's bad and good. Right. Well, we want to see him.
You want to see him.
We do want to see him. But we also could do with a few morale boosting victories here.
Well,
it's a double-edged sword there, Phil.
I know, but Haaland has been
Stephen
playing.
Kenny's not like, oh geez, I really want to see how.
Great to see him.
Yeah.
Like that scene in Mike Bassett where they give the Mexican player 3 cheers for scoring a hat-trick, you know. But yeah, no, I think even if he does start, I'm kind of waiting for that, and Erling Haaland is unavailable. But
okay,
the later in the week the better for the FAI.
Alright, Newcastle against Chelsea is the 5:30 kickoff. This is a really, really interesting game at the moment, Keith. The Chelsea form is not good. There's been no significant signs of improvement over the last week or so, even just to like get the team a sense of what they're trying to do. I think like everybody, I don't know if you're a Chelsea fan or what you think of them, but I think most people generally are hoping that Potter makes a success of it because he seems like a really good fella and his story is so unusual. But at the same time, there's a reason why most super clubs give managers a job who have a lot of experience of managing super clubs, because it's a really difficult job. What have you made of where Potter is at the moment?
Yeah, it's been a bit patchy, hasn't it? There's been certain points in his reign that I've been impressed with things he's done, and then other times when they just not turned up. And it was the defeat to Brighton that really raised eyebrows with me when they got hammered 4-1 by Brighton, and that in Graham Potter's head would have been a bit of a derby. Obviously, I wouldn't say he had something to prove, but you never want to get beaten by your old club, so he would have really wanted to win that game, and they were so poor, and it was really a tactical battle that he lost. And you know, he was always very reactive as the Brighton manager. He would go out and sort of see how other teams set up and then try and exploit what they're doing. I think with Chelsea, he's got to be a little bit more strong-handed and say, we're Chelsea, we play this way, and this is what we do. You look at Manchester City; they do not change for anybody. Liverpool will very rarely deviate from what they do. So I think Potter's at an elite club now in Chelsea, and he's got to play the way they play. I don't think he can change from week to week. Obviously there'll be certain exceptions where you play an exceptional team, a Real Madrid, a Barcelona. Maybe not Barcelona these days, but you get me point. If you play an exceptional club, then maybe a change. But 9 times out of 10, Chelsea should have a way they play and stick to that. For me, he's still trying to pick his best team. I think there's still a few decent injuries in that squad as well. So I hope and I pray that he gets an awful lot of time, because I'm like the bulk of people that I think he comes across as a really humble, down-to-earth bloke and a nice guy. He tries to further the careers of all the players that he comes across. So I hope he does well. I don't think it's a certainty, but it's a big game. Newcastle are getting bigger all the time, improving all the time, and they're 6 points ahead of Chelsea at the minute. So Graham Potter will want to close that gap before the World Cup.
Exactly. A win for Newcastle here puts them 9 points ahead of Chelsea, and nothing's guaranteed at this stage. It's far too early in the season. It's going to be a completely new season when they all come back from the World Cup. But we had Craig Hope on OTB AM yesterday, and he was making the point that of all the managers in the Premier League at the moment, if you were to give any of them 4 or 5 weeks with their team, Eddie Howe is right up there in terms of his ability to improve them, to get them to do what he wants to do. They came back from their pre-season or mid-season break last year and won 6 of the next 7 games, I think. So he's had a clear impact on players. You look at Almiron, you look at Joe Linton and a few others he was making the point to something like 8 or 9 of the starting team at the moment were on the books when he arrived. Like, whatever everybody thinks, and I think we're all in agreement that like the sports washing cannot be ignored. The football that Eddie Howe has produced is a testament to him as a coach. So if he was to pull this off, and there's no reason to expect that they won't beat Chelsea at the weekend, that's fairly remarkable.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not expecting Chelsea to win. I would be surprised if Chelsea won. If they get a draw, I think that's a good result. But going back to Newcastle, Joelinton has been, obviously, he's transformed Joelinton into this combative midfielder who obviously has an eye for a goal and has creativity as well. But he's an absolute tank as well, and he has that physicality in midfield. Almiron is just after winning the Player of the Month. Obviously was mocked with the whole Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva thing as well, and he's on fire at the moment. And this is just the start, really, you feel, for Newcastle. I mean, you can't see them getting any worse, because they're just going to keep investing in their squad because we know who owns them. And the players that they have now are all fighting for their futures at the club, because they know they're part of something that's going to be big. They want to stay part of that.
This is the biggest gravy train in world sport at the moment. If you get on board, you're going to be rich for life.
Like, he took the job a year ago, but after a few weeks there was already a few people thinking, this isn't working out that well. But like you said, they come back after the mid-season break
in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I know, and they've been sensational. And yeah, you would imagine the way, like, even think the way they played City at St James's earlier this season, where they were 3-1 up, and
it was aggressive. It wasn't we're going to sit back and try and hit you on the break. It was exactly the point Keith's making. We have a style of play, and while we're going to be aware of exactly what the opposition is doing, we're probably not going to go too far away from it week in, week out. And there's an identity there, and the players are responding to that. So you'd make them favourites for this game, right?
I would. And I think, going back to Chelsea, the worry now is they're without a win in their last 4 league games. I thought they were really poor against Arsenal. Keith touched on some of the injuries they have. You're taking out your 2 wing backs there in James and Chilwell. Aubameyang is a problem that Graham Potter has inherited, because he was brought in to work with Thomas Tuchel, who had a good relationship with him at Dortmund, and they didn't get much time together. And now Aubameyang was dreadful against Arsenal, of all clubs. You would have thought this is the one where he'd really like to stick it to them.
He'll try a leg, yeah.
But he was awful, and Arsenal outplayed them and should have won the game more comfortably. But the worry is that Chelsea fans are so used to the old ownership that if things aren't working out, you're gone. So this is going to be a real test for Todd Bowley and the American consortium.
It is. The one thing you would say is that, almost irrespective of what the result is, unless it's an absolute hammering, then at least Potter will also have a significant amount of time with a huge number of his team. Maybe not a huge number, but certainly enough to be able to go, okay, this is what we expect, this is what we're trying to do. And so, you'd hope, I think they're going to give him the rest of the season, almost irregardless of what's going on. What do you think is going to happen here, Keith?
I'm not too sure. I don't see Chelsea winning the trophy. I think it's fairly obvious that they're not going to win the Premier League. I don't think they'll win the Champions League, just because I think Graham Potter even said the first time he went to a Champions League game was the first time he managed one. So I just think you need to have a bit of pedigree in that tournament to be able to win it. You look at the likes of Real Madrid, so many times they get written off, but they just know how to win it. I don't think, even looking at the Chelsea squad, I know there's a few injuries and a couple of big injuries for them, but I just don't think they're capable of winning the Champions League. I have to say, I did say that a couple of years ago when he ended up winning it, so I could be wrong on that, but for me, they won't win the Champions League, so they're going to be trophyless. I think the best they can do in the Premier League is probably aim for the Champions League. Is that enough success? It hasn't been over the past at Chelsea, so Graham Potter could well be under an awful lot of pressure, but you even hear the likes of Pep Guardiola at Manchester City saying, please give him time. He's a good manager. As long as you give him time, he will be a success. And I hope Todd Bowley does. I hope it's a new owner at Chelsea, and I hope you have a little bit more patience, because what he's done at Brighton, I think, deserves a little bit of credit. I know they're two totally different clubs, but give him till the end of the season, reassess it then, and if they're making strides, maybe stick with it. But I think it could be a struggle for Potter, if I'm honest. If
Newcastle win that game, they'll be third at the break, and they'll be on an incredible run of form. They'll have a month with most of their players, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens off the back of that. So Chelsea do have a game in hand on Newcastle. So it's
against Liverpool. That was the postponed game.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that could go either way at this stage.
Honestly, Liverpool are flick of the coin. You don't know what's going to turn up.
Yeah. So the next game on Saturday evening is Wolves against Arsenal at 7:45 on Sky Sports. The Wolves change of manager hasn't really started to work just yet, has it?
No, well, he's not even going to take charge for this game. He's just saying to Steve Davis, you have this one and then I'll take the League Cup game, which the draw has been quite favourable. They're playing Gillingham, so a League 2 side, and that's going to be Lopetegui's first game in charge.
Right.
But Wolves, it's been an issue for as long as we can remember scoring goals. They've only scored 8 goals this season. They play some lovely stuff at times, and I mean, from an Irish point of view, I think people are going to start watching more Wolves games. The fact that the other night against Leeds, Hodge started, Conor Ronan started, obviously Nathan Collins started as well. Collins had a part in the goal, but Joe Hodge is starting to get more game time, so I think Irish football fans will start watching a bit more of Wolves, and what you see is a team that has some really good players, and you're sometimes looking at them going, how did they not win that game? Now, I don't think that will be the case tomorrow. I think Arsenal just will have too much for them.
Yeah, this is one of those games that in previous seasons when we didn't trust Arsenal, they would have found themselves getting the man sent off in the first 15 minutes and losing 2-1.
You think of David Luiz? He got sent off in that game, wasn't it?
Was it a Wolves game?
I think it was, yeah.
I didn't actually have any specific. I was actually more thinking this is the type of game that previously, in a different life, Xhaka would have kicked somebody early on and then stormed off and had a...
He's reformed. Did you see him last week at Stamford Bridge? He squared up to the Chelsea players and you just thought, is he going to snap? And he didn't.
Yeah.
Because he's winning.
Is it just that he's winning? Because he had
to confidence as well, though.
Yeah, but the bit before they started winning and before the confidence, he had to reform before that. I mean, it's obviously we're all on a journey here, Phil. His journey is particularly interesting, but there was a lot of resistance to Arteta and to his ways, Keith. But I think he's proved anybody who doubted him largely wrong at this point. That body of work he's put together now has been transformational at Arsenal.
Yeah, that Arsenal team is. I'm an Arsenal fan, and I have to be honest. I thought maybe top 6 at best this season, and I know when Jesus and Zinchenko came in, I got a little bit. I was happier, but I did. We were a better team. They made us a better team on paper, but I didn't expect this type of improvement. I really didn't, and I do still think Champions League would be what we're still aiming for, if we're honest. But it's very, very hard to argue with what's going on at Arsenal. It's brilliant stuff. You look at the Swiss centre midfielder Xhaka that we're talking about. At the start of the season, I was saying Arsenal are only a player away. If they can get Tielemans out of Leicester and put him in, that would be excellent for Arsenal. But I wouldn't take him now. Xhaka's been a different player. He's been absolutely excellent, and I think he's probably up there with most improved with Almiron, to be honest with you, because the two of them are different players this season, different beasts. And like you say, there's just for all the good attacking play that Xhaka is doing. You see when he went head to head during the week, you're thinking, is he going to do something silly here? He seems to have evolved as a person as well, and Mikel Arteta was largely down to that. You remember when he came off and the fans were booing him and he reacted poorly, and you were thinking that's the end. But Arteta just managed to keep him around, grow him back into the team, and it's been excellent man management. And I always go back to his handling of Aubameyang as well. The way he handled Aubameyang, because he has such a young core of players in the Arsenal team, he had to be seen to be a disciplinarian, and he did it really well. And that was a really difficult decision, you have to remember, because at the time Aubameyang was Arsenal's best player, and yeah, they're going from strength to strength to strength, and I think he's well and truly answered all the questions about his managerial styles.
The Aubameyang thing is really important because Aubameyang was an asset. He's on the club's books. There's a monetary value beside him that the head of finances, like, why are we giving £17 million away? What are you doing? Because of your ego, you're giving him £17 million away? And Arteta's like, yeah, because I'm going to have to run the club. And still the board are like, this is madness. This is our money. And you want to just burn it for nothing and give it to Barcelona.
Yeah.
And he's going to go and score a lot of goals there. And then they're going to sell him and get the money back. And he's like, yeah, I do. And now it's like, okay, Mikel, anything else you'd like us to do? How else can we help you here?
Yeah, it's worth a treat. And last Sunday, just really, it hit home just how right Arteta was. And in fairness, Aubameyang's form, like his best form at Arsenal, he was brilliant, but he hadn't.
It had been a while.
Yeah, but ultimately, what ends up costing Arsenal Champions League last season is just a lack of a goal scorer. Lacazette gave it a good go, but just didn't have the quality. So when they lost that game at Newcastle, and they'd obviously lost to Spurs a few days beforehand, and everyone thought, that's it. That was your chance, Arsenal. But then, they signed a few players. Saliba comes in. He's been unbelievable. And he's obviously part of the France World Cup squad. And whether he starts or not, they've an embarrassment of riches in central defence. Like Konate's after getting in, he probably won't get any game time at the World Cup. And I think he's an unbelievable defender as well. It's just about whether they can avoid injuries. But just certain things. Last Sunday watching the game, Gabriel Jesus missed a chance. Now people are going on, he's not scoring enough, but if you watch, just your eyes will tell you how good he is and how important he is. He missed a header, but if you look at the move, it's just the way they play now. There was glimpses of it at Old Trafford, a game that they lost, and everyone said, are Arsenal really going to be good enough? But they're playing some unbelievable football, some one-touch football, quick. They have a style of play.
It's the only league game they've lost, in fairness.
Yeah.
It's not bad so far. Okay, so the two Sunday games, Brighton against Aston Villa is live at 2 o'clock on Sky Sports, and at 4:30 it's Fulham versus Manchester United. The Brighton recovery from the little blip they had after Potter left, Keith, when Potter left and the new manager comes in and they have a blip, you're like, oh, this could get pear-shaped pretty quickly. But then they right the ship, and they righted it spectacularly, obviously, against Chelsea last week. He obviously inherited a good squad who knew what they were doing, and maybe we should expect them to be at the level they're at, but I didn't expect them to be as good as quickly post-Potter as they have been.
No, I think that'd be a fair comment. I think a lot of people were expecting a little bit of a blip after Graham Potter's reign, and it would have only been natural, different tactics, different people coming in, different coaches, different backroom staff. All the relationships are severed all of a sudden, and it could easily go pear-shaped. But I've seen De Zerbi manage a couple of times, and he just has this knack of being able to get players on side, and I like him. The way he talks to the media, he seems to be a nice enough bloke. He talks well. I've heard him speak at length about Evan Ferguson as well, and when he speaks about Evan Ferguson, you can tell he loves him. He said he's delighted to get him back on side, another contract, but he needs to grow and he needs to evolve. So to me, that he understands the game. He sees what's in front of him. He's not just going to rush people through when there's a bit of fanfare behind him. So for me, I think Brighton have a really good manager in De Zerbi. I think there will be an adjustment period, because obviously it's not going to be the same as Graham Potter. It would be miraculous if he done as well as Graham Potter has under Brighton, because I think we can all say that the squad that Brighton have is overachieving. There's some outstanding players within the squad. You look at Trossard. I love watching Trossard week in, week out. He's brilliant in the Premiership. Danny Welbeck, a player I've played with, although he's getting older and older, his movement is exceptional, and he's still causing problems up there. So they have the bulk of a really good team, but I have to say I think a top half finish for them would be success.
Yeah, they're sixth at the moment as things stand. If Villa were to win this game, which not quite unlikely, but if they were to win this game, they'd actually only be 3 points behind Brighton.
Yeah, look, at Brighton and this was the same under Potter, on their day they could be unbelievable. And I think what they did really well against Arsenal was they were just clinical, which isn't actually something we've always said with Brighton, where they create a load of chances and they don't put enough away. But they have some really good players. Unfortunately, they're going to lose some of those players. Like Trossard, that Keith mentioned, if he gets any game time at the World Cup, I'm sure he's going to be... there has been links with Chelsea, obviously the Graham Potter thing. Caicedo in midfield looks like...
Try and keep them off until the end of the season, and then you promised them, look, we'll sell you as long as we get a boatload of cash for you in the summer.
But it also, like going back to De Zerbi, he obviously is different from Potter, but he also is similar in the type of players that he wants. So there's no point in... You see it so many times at clubs where they go and they appoint a completely different manager. You have to appoint a manager that can work. That can work with the players that you have. Yeah,
and there has been a project there over a long period of time. Obviously, all the way back to the end of the Houghton era. Villa, any chance of winning this? Like these one-off games where Unai sets the team up to defend, and hit on the break.
Do you know what I was thinking? This would be some start for Unai Emery when they went 2-1 up at Old Trafford last night, and then just all unravelled. And Tyrone Mings, unfortunately, was central to it. Yeah, when he came on for Konza, he nearly gave away a penalty. Rashford knocked one wide, but then it just seems that when he makes a mistake, he doesn't get away with it. Like, players make mistakes, but it just seems anytime Tyrone Mings makes a mistake, he gets punished.
There was some talk of them not picking Emi Martinez for the game at the weekend as a favour because they had not picked him before at the end last season, before whatever the CONMEBOL variation of the European Nations Cup was, and now they have to pick him. You can't pick the same keeper they had last night.
No, especially when you see the goal that he gave away.
No. It's kind of important not to kick the ball to the opposition inside your own penalty area. Fulham versus Manchester United is the last one on Sunday at 4:30. The Ten Hag revolution continues, is it? Or this is a real proper threat for Manchester United that Fulham could do them, couldn't they?
Yeah, it depends if Mitrovic plays or not. He didn't play last week. He is crucial for Serbia. So you wonder, is there talks between Marco Silva and the Serbian management team going, like, if he's doubtful, like, would rather you don't play him because we have a game against Brazil. It's kind of a big one for us.
He's like, I have a game against Manchester United. It's kind of a big one for us. What do you do?
Well, this is the one I have to say, one of the players who split opinions at the start, but this shows just the way football is, that you have a few bad games or a few iffy games and people write you off. But Lisandro Martinez has been unbelievable for United. I love watching him. Obviously a lot's been made about his size.
He's a bit of a tug. There's like, in a good way, there's a bit of a tug in him.
The biggest compliment you can give to a player like that is if he played for your club, you love him.
Absolutely.
And if he plays against you, you hate him. So he falls into that category, and I think United fans would be happy enough with that. But I did think, I'd love to see him up against someone like Mitrovic. But he's clever enough that he's not going to try and get into a duel with him where ball comes in.
He's kicked everybody he's played against this year. Yeah. And it worked against everybody. He didn't kick Haaland. He might now, in retrospect, next time they play. Maybe he's leaving that until there's a big game that actually matters as opposed to the first league game they play. How dangerous is this a game for Manchester United, Keith, do you think?
I think it's a tricky enough tie, but I wouldn't say it hinges on Mitrovic playing, because Fulham are far from a one-man team. But if Mitrovic plays, I give them a much better opportunity of winning the game. And we can you look at tactics, you look at this, you look at that. If Mitrovic plays, I would tell him to go and stand on Martinez. I think that's fairly obvious. And I know Martinez has proven that he gets up early, he heads the ball well, but Mitrovic is one of them that if you're anywhere around him, he makes sure you don't jump. He's all arms, he'll drag you down, he has all the dark arts of not letting you jump. So if Martinez gets too close to him, he'll pin him. And you seen the way when he scored that goal against Liverpool at the back post, that Trent Alexander-Arnold doesn't defend it particularly well, but you think if you can get Martinez into them sort of duels where Mitrovic is coming in with a header, you just think there's only going to be one winner. So for me, get the ball out wide for Fulham, put all sorts of quality into the box, put United under pressure and play from there. And yeah, I think it's a tricky enough tie, and like you said, I think there could be a couple of the United players coming off the boil. So I would put that down as maybe Fulham getting something out of that, yeah.
Well, that'd be interesting because it kind of changes again the kind of questions about Manchester United, and the pressure ratchets up just a little bit more.
It's just, this is going to happen as long as Ten Hag is there, but especially in this first season, there's going to be highs and lows, and you just have to ride with it. If you're a United fan, you'd be so disappointed with how the first 15 minutes went against Villa, and you were coming off a decent enough performance in Spain. Obviously they didn't get the second goal, but the bright sparks are Garnacho scored in that game in Spain, then he came on last night and he was brilliant, and that as well gives players like Jadon Sancho a kick up the backside.
Where is he?
Well, he's not going to the World Cup, and
like not even, and no one's batting an eyelid that he's not going to the World Cup.
No, and it's just, and I don't think it's down to a lack of ability, but I think if you've watched Sancho play for Dortmund, he's a player that really thrived in a very fluid attacking system, which he hasn't had at United. Now, that's what Ten Hag says will come. So I'm not writing off Jadon Sancho, definitely not.
Right, okay. Fulham versus Manchester United is on Sunday at 4:30 on Sky Sports, and the football kickoff is live every Friday at around about 11:30 with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously there's no show next Friday because the World Cup is on. My thanks to Keith Treacy and to Phil Egan and to you guys out there for watching as well on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.
The football kickoff
with Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.